Good morning, everybody. We are inaugurating a very important class. The book that we are about to begin is called Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, an abbreviated code of Jewish law. God gave us many commandments, and they all appear in the Torah and translated and interpreted in the oral Torah. But they are scattered all over the Talmud, the oral tradition. In the 16th century, a famous rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Karo, put them together in what we call Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch means a set table. Shulchan is table, Aruch is set, meaning that it's all organized with an index in an orderly fashion according to the topics. Hundreds of years passed, 300 years passed, and not everybody had the time to look into Shulchan Aruch to know what to do. Came a rabbi, and he decided to create something what is called the abbreviated version, the cliff note of Shulchan Aruch, where he only apply the laws that apply to us in our day-to-day life. So the books that we're going to be studying will teach us how to conduct ourselves in our day-to-day life and personal affairs, happy occasions, holidays, interaction, what's allowed, what's not. It will not cover many other components of the Torah. For example, all the laws that do not pertain to our day-to-day life, things that do not apply for us today, that there were biblical laws but apply only when the temple stood, only for priests, for high priests, for kings, etc., slavery, kings. These are laws that are not included in the abbreviated Code of Jewish Law. The order of the book is very simple. It starts from the beginning of the day and goes on throughout the day, then takes on special days, then takes on special occasions, happy occasion, and concludes with sad occasions, the end of life. So anytime you want to refer to to know what's right, what to do and what not to do, how to do, are you allowed to or not, you can always look at the index and follow what to do. You go back and you read, and you'll be able to know exactly what to do. I can only tell you one thing, that if you will participate and make sure to be at every class, you will have a vast knowledge of what Jewish tradition is about, day-to-day life. Not the philosophy, but the actual behavior. And unfortunately, in this community, we can say that most Jews have no clue what Judaism is about. This book will familiarize yourself in a way that you can go into large Jewish populations where people do study every day and know exactly what to do and what not to do. Let's begin on page 3. Chapter 1. The laws pertaining. Chapter 1. The laws pertaining to rising in the morning. I will be reading and you can listen. 1. I place God before me at all times. Psalm 16:8 is a major principle of the Torah and for the paths of the righteous who proceed before God. Always to know God is before us, watching every move of our life. The way a person lives, acts, and deals when he is alone in his home differs from his behavior when he is in the presence of a great king. Similarly, his speech and his manner of talking with his household and close circle differs from his speech and manner of talking when he is in the king's chambers. Surely, then, he takes care that all his acts and words are correct and proper. Simply put, if we remember that God watches over us, the way we conduct ourselves, eat, speak, act in front of a king or a prime minister or a president is much different than we do it alone when we're at home. If we remember that God is over us and watching us, we will conduct ourselves totally different. Surely, This applies when the person becomes aware that the great King, the Holy One, blessed be He, whose glory fills the entire world, stands over him and observes his deeds. As Jeremiah states, "Can a person hide in the secret places without my seeing him? Says the Lord, behold, I fill up the heavens and earth." This realization should immediately prompt awe and humility resulting from fear of God, blessed be He, and cause one to feel shame because of Him. So that's the beginning of our life, to realize that God watches over us when we go to sleep, when we wake up, whatever we do, and therefore our conduct during the day, for whatever it is we're busy with, should be different than if we didn't, as we realize that God watches over us. Number 2. Similarly, when lying on his bed, a person should realize before whom he is lying. Immediately upon rising from sleep in the morning, he should recall the kindness of God, which God, blessed be He, performs for him, returning his soul. He entrusts his soul to God tired, and God returns it to him renewed and rested, so that he can carry out his service with all of his potential and serve Him the entire day. This is the totality of man's purpose for existence. According to Jewish tradition, we are here to serve God, and therefore when we rise up in the morning, God gives us the soul all fresh and renewed, so we have the energy to serve God during the day. Therefore, we must be thankful to God. Eicha, Lamentation states, "Renewed in the morning, great is your faithfulness." This implies that every morning a person is renewed as a new creation. Therefore, he should thank God, blessed be He, for this with all his heart. Thanking God for getting up in the morning is the greatest thing we do right when we rise up. While he is still on his bed, he should recite Modeh Ani. And here is a translation of Modeh Ani. "I offer thanks to you, living and eternal King, for having mercifully restored my soul within me. Great is your faithfulness." This may be recited even though one's hands are not clean, for it does not contain any of the names of God. One should pause slightly between the words Bechemla, mercifully, and Rabbi Munatecha, great is your faithfulness. So even though we're not allowed to say God's name or make a prayer before we wash our hands after we get up in the morning, yet the phrase Modeh Ani, we thank you God for returning my soul all renewed, is something we say immediately when we get up while we're still in bed. Actually, we sit down and we say that prayer with a covering of the head, correct. Number 3. Yehuda ben Tema would say, in Ethics of Our Father, "Be bold like a leopard and swift like an eagle. Run like a deer and be brave like a lion to do the will of your Father in heaven." Bold like a leopard implies that a person should not be embarrassed before the people who scoff at his service of God, blessed be He. So he must be bold like a leopard to do what's right without being ashamed. Swift like an eagle relates to a person's sight, teaching that he should be swift to close his eyes when he sees evil, for that is the beginning of sin. The heart desires, and the eyes see, and the limbs complete the act. The beginning of sin starts when we look where we're not supposed to. And therefore we have to be swift like an eagle to close our eyes when we see something that's not appropriate. Run like a deer relates to one's feet. One's feet should run to good, brave to good. We should run to the synagogue to be on time. We should run to help the spouse. We should run to do.
You've been playing that all
Brave like a lion relates to the heart. The courage requires in the service of God is rooted in the heart. This teaches that a person should apply his heart to do his service, God's service, overcome the evil inclination, and be victorious over it. As a mighty man overcomes his enemy, conquers them, and throws him to the ground. So we need to use the bravery of the heart to serve God and do what's right. Therefore, with the bravery of a lion, a person should rise from his sleep, recite Modeh Ani, and rise with eagerness to the service of the Creator, blessed be He. before the evil inclination overcomes them with arguments and persuasions not to get up. For example, in the winter it will cleverly tempt him, how can you get up so early in the morning while it is still cold? In the summer it will suggest, why get up from bed when you have not slept enough? It will offer other similar arguments. So in the winter it tells you it's too cold out, nobody is up yet. In the summer it tells you you're too tired, you went to sleep late, because in the summer the sunset is much later, people go to sleep a lot later, so they don't sleep enough. So why don't get up? This is the evil inclination's ways of getting us to stay in bed longer. The evil inclination knows very well how to trap people with tricks to prevent them from arising. Therefore, anyone who is a master of his soul, who fears and reveres the word of God, must overcome it and refuse to listen to it. Even if he finds this difficult because of the heaviness and laziness of the body, he should place the will of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as his goal. He should think to himself that if a person were to call him to a business matter, to collect a debt, or to save his money from loss, for example, if a fire began ablaze in the city, surely he would get up eagerly, without any hesitation, because of his love for his money. Similarly, if he had to report to a king's service, he would get up eagerly, without hesitation, out of fear that others would betray him, or because of his desire to find favor in the king's eyes. How much more so should he take care to rise with speed and eagerness to the service of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Once a person trains himself to do this 4 or 5 times, it will not be so difficult for him, because a person who comes to purify himself is helped from above. What the Rabbi is telling us is it's very difficult, because the evil inclination will use any trick in the book to keep us in bed. So what we realize is we have to say to ourselves, if I had a business matter to sign a contract or to save my money, there is a fire in my business, I'll surely run over to save myself, because money is important. How much more so it is important to serve God and please God for His commandments. And the Rabbi concludes with saying that if we do it 4 or 5 times, we get up at a certain given time without listening to our evil inclinations' excuses, it will become something of ordinary. It wouldn't be so difficult, because someone who comes to serve God, God will aid that person and make it easy on him. It is desirable, if possible, for a person to rise early, to get up at midnight and recite Tikkun Chatzot, as Eicha, Lamentation states, arise, call out at night at the beginning of the watches. Anybody knows what Tikkun Chatzot is? Tikkun Chatzot is a special prayer to say at midnight, to cry out for the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, because it's the appropriate time when God Himself is mourning for the destruction of Jerusalem. But regardless, this is not for every person, only righteous men do that. Regardless, it is appropriate, he says, to get up very early in the morning. The Jewish way is to get up very early. A person should mourn the destruction of the temple just as God mourns at this time. As Jeremiah states, God will roar like a lion from on high. From His holy dwelling place He will lift His voice. He will roar mightily because of His dwelling. He will say, how bitter is it for the children that because of their sins I destroyed my house, burnt my temple, and exiled them among the nations. If he cannot rise before midnight, he should try hard to rise before dawn. As King David declared in Psalm, I will wake the dawn, and the dawn will not wake me. Tikkun Chatzot may be recited after midnight as well. King David used to say that he would wake the dawn, not the sunrise will not wake him, but he will wake sunrise. In other words, he will be up before sunrise. Afterwards, a person should involve himself in Torah study, each one according to his ability. A fixed period of study in Mishnah takes precedence over all other matters. Through this one merits the revelations of the soul, for Mishnah is and Neshama are made up of the same Hebrew letters. The most appropriate thing to study before, as soon as we get up, is Mishnah, because Mishnah has the same letters as Neshama. It wakes up the soul and brings the soul out. That's why in the prayer book we say Rabbi Shmuel Omer, the Mishnah before Hodu, it's to study a Mishnah to wake up the soul. If
I did not know that.
If he is not capable of doing this, he should involve himself with reciting Psalm, the Ma'amadot, the fixed portions of the Torah established for each day, and ethical texts. It is better to recite a little with genuine feeling than to recite much without the proper intentions. It is appropriate to study slow and to recite less, but to really feel what we say than just to quickly repeat like a packet. Rabbi Chia taught in the Talmud, whenever one involves himself in Torah study at night, the divine presence stands opposite him. God comes and stands next to us when we study at night. As Eicha states, arise, call out at night, in the beginning of the watches, pour out your heart like water before the face of God. That is, the divine presence stands before him. It says before the face of God. Our sages in Zohar also taught, whoever involved himself with Torah study at night is called a servant of God. If you want to be called a servant of God, you have to study at night. Why? As Psalm states, all the servants of God who stand in the house of God during the night. A servant of God is to serve God at night by studying Torah. On the short nights, when it is impossible for a person to get up that early because you went to sleep very late in Russia, in Poland, sometimes sunset may be 11 or 12 at midnight. So by the time he goes to bed, it's a couple of hours and it's already sunrise. He should try hard to get up with enough time to prepare himself to go to the synagogue to pray with a minyan. The most important part, even if you cannot get up before sunrise, make sure you get up to be in minyan on time. Number 6. Here, we're finishing.
Highlight that.
Regarding the recitation of Psalm or other passages from Torah, prophets, or holy writings, Tanakh by heart, if they are not known by all, then even a person who knows them by heart should refrain from doing so. Nevertheless, a blind person is allowed to recite these passages by heart. This is another Jewish law. Anything that's written in the Torah, Psalm, all the Bible, the entire 24, unless it is a prayer that we all know by heart, like Shema Israel, we're not allowed to recite by heart. We must look in a book and read from it, except a blind man is allowed to recite by heart. That's why it's called written Torah. That's the difference between the oral tradition and the written Torah. Even though the oral tradition is recorded in the Talmud, we may recite it by heart, like Mishnah and Talmud. But Torah, or Nach, or Nevi'im, and Ktuvim, which is Ruth, Song of Songs, Psalm, we must recite it from a text. One more, 7. One should rebuke those who conclude the prayers of supplication in the Ma'amadot with the blessing, blessed are you, God, who hears prayers. Rather, one should recite blessed without mentioning God's name. It says that those who say those prayers at night, they conclude with God's name and say a blessing, and it is inappropriate. But this is not applicable for us. But the one before is very applicable. If I know a prayer by heart, and as a book is from the book of Psalm, I may not recite it by heart. I have to look in the book to recite it, unless it is a prayer that is by all is known as a prayer by heart. For example, would be, as I mentioned, Shema Israel, Adon Olam. This is the only very, very few prayers that we may recite by heart. And that concludes our first chapter. God willing, next week we'll begin chapter number 2. And thank you very much.
Thank you.